Hey everyone! Today we will be talking about the basics of an experiment, and we're going to teach that through a simple warm versus cold water food coloring experiment. So what are the basics of an experiment? Before we talk about the experiment, let's quickly review the scientific method. So first we ask a question. Basically, what are you trying to answer? In this case, we're asking the question, how does the temperature of water affect how fast food coloring mixes in? And then we have the hypothesis, which is a guess or a temporary answer based on our personal logic and observation. Here we can hypothesize the higher the temperature of water, meaning it's warmer, the faster the food coloring mixes in. And then we come up with an experiment to test the hypothesis. From there, we use the results from the experiment to accept or reject the hypothesis. And if the hypothesis is rejected, we can make and test a new hypothesis. So now, what is an experiment? Well, in an experiment, we need to have an independent variable. That is what we're changing, what we're controlling. For example, in this case, we're testing temperature of water. So we'll have cold and warm water. Then we'll have a dependent variable, which are the measured effects of what we changed and how it affected the outcome. So here we're seeing how fast food coloring mixed in, or how long it took for the food coloring to mix. Then we also have to have variables that need to be kept constant. We need to make sure these variables, such as the amount of water, amount of food coloring, room temperature, do not affect the outcome. Now, in our procedure, which is basically how the experiment will be carried out, we have materials, which will include 2 cups or glasses, and preferably clear and similar sized, and then warm water in 1 cup and cold water in another cup. We also need food coloring, preferably 2 dark colors like red, green, or blue, like I have here, and then also we need 2 cups, 2 clear cups preferably. Then we can also label them so that we know which one is which. Now, as for the procedure, we need to prepare 1 cup of warm water, 1 cup of cold water. So we can have 1 cup of warm water from the warm side of a faucet and then 1 cup of cold water. And then for the cold water, I recommend adding an ice cube to make it even colder than room temperature. Then we have to add 1 drop of food coloring to each cup at the same time. Make sure to remove the lids from each food color and then use both hands to squeeze equal drops into the food cups at the same time. Then we will observe which drop mixes fastest. We can also use a stopwatch to record exactly how fast, how long it takes for the food coloring to mix in. Alright, so the results. We can see that the food coloring mixed faster in warmer water, and we can see that the hypothesis can be accepted. So let's talk about the science behind this. Okay, why does food coloring mix faster in warmer water? Okay, let's talk about what warm means first. Warm means giving off more heat. So let's discuss some key terms. Heat is essentially the flow of thermal energy. Thermal energy is a type of kinetic energy. Very simply, kinetic energy is the energy of a particle from its motion. So something moving like that has energy from its motion. It has a simple equation that involves mass and velocity. Velocity is just speed in a direction. So how fast something's going. Temperature is the measure of average kinetic energy. So what does that mean here? Warm water has more energy in comparison to the cooler particles in the room or your hand. And because it has more kinetic energy, all the water molecules move much faster. That's explained by the kinetic energy of warm water being greater than the kinetic energy of cold water, and since we know the mass of the water molecules are all the same still, that means the velocity of the molecules in warm water have to be greater than the velocity of the molecules in cold water. So those are the key points that we have to remember. Warm water has more energy, and warm water has molecules of higher velocity. So then how will the food coloring interact The food coloring particles that come into contact with the faster moving water molecules of the warm water are pushed around faster, and in the end it mixes faster. So to apply this to other things, we can talk about how kinetic energy is related to 3 states of matter. So remember, we know warm water has higher kinetic energy. So that meant that the particles were all moving faster and pushing against each other. That meant they're more spaced out. Cold water, on the other hand, has lower kinetic energy and the particles much closer to each other. So for solids, they have lower kinetic energy with all the particles being much closer together, more tightly packed, not much room for movement. Liquids, they have a kinetic energy between solids and gases, with particles that are pretty close together and more free-flowing, but still not as far apart as gases. Gases then have the highest kinetic energy because you see all these particles are moving a lot faster. They have more kinetic energy. Alright, so thank you for listening and paying attention. And if you have any questions, you can ask us. And we wish you happy learning.